claims that Muslims make, like saying that Jesus Christ was a Muslim. And then like I'm asking them, how can we verify that? Okay, but just go to the previous scriptures. That's like, okay, that's like an objective way we can verify it. But I'm like, you believe the scriptures are corrupted. And then like, no, but we just take whatever agrees with the Quran. And I'm like, that's like circular.
But a Muslim literally means one who submits to God. Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Are you a Christian, atheist, agnostic? What are you?
I'm a Christian, but I just wanted to ask you guys,
Okay.
if I could, about, because I know the Quran says it has continuity with the previous prophets. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So how would we, like, if it's going to claim that Jesus Christ or Moses or Adam or whatever other prophet was Muslim, how would we verify that?
By verifying whether or not the Quran is a true revelation. And if it is a true revelation, everything that comes in it would be true.
Okay. How do we verify it's a true revelation?
So there's a few criteria that you can use that I believe are objective, right? You can use the criteria of preservation. Does the Quran meet this criteria of being preserved? Now, again, before I continue, isolating any one of these criteria alone isn't sufficient, right? Because obviously a book can be preserved, but that alone doesn't prove that it's from God.
Yeah.
Correct? So, number one, is it preserved? Can it be traced back to its origins, right? And before I get into that, we understand, and I'm sure you agree, that when it comes to the Bible, New and Old Testament, we cannot trace it back to the prophets that it says it comes from, right? I'm sure you agree with that. Just speaking historically.
Historically, I need to do more research, but I guess that is a point of view, popular point of view.
Okay, and I'll just support it with one thing, and then I'll continue on. We understand that the oldest Old Testament that we have is the Dead Sea Scrolls, which come almost 2,000 years after the lifetime of Moses. Peace and blessings be upon him. And we know that the earliest manuscripts that we have of the New Testament, the earliest complete manuscripts that we have, come 300 years after the life of Jesus, and that the New Testament wasn't written by eyewitness accounts. And again, the manuscripts that we have are very little we have zero from the first century, fragments from the second and third century. And
sorry, which parts of Go ahead, my bad.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, what's your question? I was going to ask them, which parts of the New Testament do you think aren't written by eyewitness accounts?
All of it is not.
All of it. So
we don't believe that Paul. Yeah.
No. What about the Gospels?
Yeah. So the Gospels aren't written by eyewitness accounts. We know that Mark isn't an eyewitness. We know through the teachings of the church fathers that he was most likely a scribe of Peter. We know that Luke was a student of Paul. We know that the Gospel of Matthew wasn't written by Matthew. It's an anonymous writing, and it wasn't attributed to Matthew until the 2nd century. If you look at verses like Matthew chapter 9, verse 9, where it's talking about Matthew in the third person, it gives you very little reason to believe that Matthew actually wrote it. It says, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. This is just one small reason to assume that Matthew isn't the author of Matthew. Same thing with the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John in chapter 21, verse 24 and 25 says, this is the disciple who testifies to these things and who has written them down, and we know that his testimony is true. Not only that, not only are these things written in the third person, but the dating of them come decades after the life of these disciples, or when these disciples would have been living and would have been capable of writing these things down. And these are Greek written texts, right? They're written in Koine Greek.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I apologize. I know I said a lot.
No, it's okay. I think like the earliest manuscript of John should be like around, I don't know, 100 around 100, right?
Yeah, P52.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Is that in your belief?
P52.
Yeah, is that in your belief,
Yeah,
like
so
discrediting John?
so the earliest manuscript that we have is P52, and it's the size of a credit card. Right? It's nothing that you can actually recreate the Gospel of John with.
Yeah.
It's a very, very small fragmented piece. Um, but again, like this idea that John wrote it is something that comes in the second century. It's not something that was uh, a tradition that was passed on, from the first century Christians.
Okay. Okay.
But again, like, listen, I can tell you all of these things, right? You can take it for what it is and then go study it on your own.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I like to present the information, and again, if anything that I say is not true, you can DM me or come back on the live, tomorrow when we go back on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
But yeah, so this is just one reason why we don't believe that the Bible is preserved. We do, however, find that the Quran is preserved. We find that we can recreate the entirety of the Quran with just first century manuscripts. Not only that, but the main mode of transmission when it comes to the Quran isn't the manuscript tradition, because as we can see with the Bible, you can make mistakes when transmitting something by text. But the main mode of transmission when it comes to the Quran is the oral tradition. This is how the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, this is how they learned the Quran. This is how their companions learned the Quran. And this is how it's been passed down to us for 1400 years.
Yeah.
And this, based on the evidence, is the strongest form of preservation, because you can't change a text that's been memorized by millions and billions of people. So number one, just to continue on with this criteria, is preservation, right? If a text it can be proven that it's preserved and can be traced back to its origins, I think this is one way of determining whether something is truly divine or not.
Yeah, but in itself, it's not proof
in
of
itself, it's not.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. In and of itself, it's not sufficient, right? It has to be backed up with other corroborating evidences.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go to the other ones if you want.
Yeah, so the other one is, I think that the revelation itself has to claim to be from God, right? I think this is a very important, and it's actually overlooked by many people. I don't see anywhere, and again, I apologize, but I'm going to keep comparing the Bible and the Quran, right? Because it's your point of reference. So in the Bible, I don't see anywhere where it actually claims to be a revelation given to us from God. You see, maybe very ambiguous ways of trying to interpret it as being divine, but there's nothing that tells us that these 27 books, at least for the New Testament, are meant to be together, right? Christians read them and assume that they're univocal, meaning that they're one voice, one speaker, that they were written with the intention that they're going to come together. And this isn't the case historically. In the Quran, it makes it very clear that this is a revelation given to us from the Creator. Allah says in Surah Taha, which is the 20th surah in the Quran, He says, "We have not revealed the Quran to you to cause you distress, but as a reminder of those who are in awe of Allah. It is a revelation from the one who created the earth and the high heavens." So here's just one example of where it makes it clear that this book is coming from the divine. And again, this criteria on its own, if you single it out, isn't sufficient enough, right? But when we compile it with the other points that I'm going to bring up, then we can see collectively that this is a sufficient reason to believe that this is coming from the divine.
Yeah.
So number one, preservation. Number two, it's claimed to be from God, right? Number three is the information that it gives us, right? If it can be proven that it's preserved and it can be traced back to its origins, and it says that it's from God. And the third thing, the information that's within the text, if we can prove that this information could not have been revealed by a mere human being, that it wasn't naturally possible, then this is another sufficient reason to believe that this book is from God. That could be, things that line up with the natural world, information that is just being discovered. It could be information that was lost, historical information that was lost during that time that we're just coming to find out. It can be prophecy, things that were foretelling the future that somebody 1400 years ago couldn't have known, right? These are all reasons to believe that this is coming from a divine source. And then the fourth reason would be the source that it comes from, the prophet that it comes from. Is this person proven to have the qualities of a prophet and a messenger? I think all of these things combined would give us reason to believe that the Quran is a divine book. And when you study the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, I think it's evident that he is a true prophet and a true messenger. I apologize for being long-winded, but yeah.
Thank you for that, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a question that's been like tickling my brain. Like what I was trying to get at is that like there seems to be some like sort of like epistemological like problem with like the claims that Muslim make, like a Muslim would make, like saying that like Jesus Christ was a Muslim, and then like I'm asking them, it's like, okay, how can we verify that? And they're like, okay, but just go to the previous scriptures. That's like, okay, that's like an objective way we can verify it. But I'm like, you believe the scriptures are corrupted, and then like, no, but we just take whatever agrees with the Quran, and I'm like, that's like circular. And I was like wondering if you had any like clarification about that.
Yeah, it's a great question, brother. Like, I get where you're coming from. This idea that these past prophets and messengers were Muslims. Obviously, somebody would want evidences for that external to the Quran, right? Now, it's important for us to define what a Muslim means, right? In the Arabic language, and I'm sure you've heard this already, but a Muslim literally means one who submits to God. We know that being a Muslim today requires somebody to follow the 5 pillars of Islam, right? These are the 5 pillars that are required in order for you to be a Muslim. I'm sure you already know what they are. But outside of that, there's also the 6 pillars of faith that I think is universal, that can be applied to anybody at any time. And as long as these prophets have these 6 pillars of faith and they submitted their wills to God, I think that they follow under that definition of being a Muslim. The 6 pillars of faith are, number 1, believing in God, right? Believing in God's angels, believing in the revelations that were sent to the different prophets. Number 4 would be believing in the prophets themselves. Number 5, believing in the day of judgment, right? That there's going to be a day where God judges everybody and everybody's resurrected. And then the 6th thing is believing in the divine decree that God has, or that God, wills. And I think that if you use this criteria across the board, all the prophets met this criteria. And this is literally what it means to be a Muslim, is having these beliefs and submitting to whatever laws and legislations that God was giving the people. And so according to this definition, I think that everybody would agree that all the prophets were Muslims. I think the issue that people have is that Muslims are associated with a specific group of people who follow the Quran, who follow the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and people just can't wrap their mind around somebody living before this being called a Muslim, if that makes sense.
I definitely acknowledge that, and I know that there's more to being a Muslim than that. But even with these articles of faith or pillars of faith or submitting to one God, I think like the question still stands, like, how do we know these prophets did that or believed in that?
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you another question. Not that I'm dodging this. I can answer it again. The way I would answer it, just so you don't think I'm dodging it, is that we can verify it through the Quran, right? The Quran is a revelation that we can prove is from the divine, and if a divine revelation supersedes any other thing, right? Whether that's historical information, because history is only probable, right? It's not definitive. So if we have a definitive source, which would be revelation coming from the divine, that would supersede anything else. And I think both of us can agree on that. Now, my question back to you would be, how do we know anything that the prophets did, right? If we're looking at the Old Testament, for instance, how do we know what Abraham actually did and what he said? If the revelation that we have that's coming to us about Abraham doesn't come except thousands of years after Abraham, how can you justify that the Old Testament is actually a true revelation from God? What would be your criteria that you can use to determine that?
Yeah, listen, as to like the historicity or like the reliability of the Old Testament and New Testament. I haven't really looked into that, so I can't really give you a fleshed out answer. But I can say, like, from a Christian perspective, it's the fact that we don't believe these texts are corrupted. So from that framework, we could say that we know what Abraham believed in, what Abraham did, what Jesus did, what Moses did. But from the Muslim framework, like, it's not just Christians that don't have the revelation anymore. You guys don't have it anymore because we're living in the same era. So it's like, how do you justify this? And you said
So,
from the Quran.
yeah. So again, we would verify from the revelation that's available to us, right? But keep in mind, like I think it is important, and I encourage Muslims to do this as well. I don't think, like, obviously, theology is number one for both Christians and Muslims, and I think it's important for us to study our theology first and foremost. But from an Islamic and from a Christian standpoint, I think historicity is very, very important. I think it will just solidify a Muslim's faith to understand the manuscript tradition, and that we can actually trace our religion back physically to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And I think it's important for a Christian to do the same thing when it comes to the Bible. And I respect the fact that you're not,
Yeah,
just giving me some
I'll definitely
ad
check it
hoc
out because
answer.
it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is important, bro. I think it's important because not only studying the manuscript tradition, but I think also the theological developments that happen within the church.
Yeah.
What the first century Christians were believing, what the second century Christians were believing, what the early church fathers talk about, Jesus' relationship with the Father, the Council of Nicaea and what took place there, the Council of Constantinople, the Council of Carthage, all of these different councils that took place. I think it's important for Christians to really study it
Yeah.
because I think that's going to create more questions than answers. And I think in Islam, it's the opposite. I think that the more you study, the more questions are being answered and the less doubts that you have about your religion. But again, just to go back to your point, I think that historically speaking, like if we're looking at it just from a purely historical point of view, there's no real way to verify anything that we have available to us about the previous prophets, right? Historically speaking, we can verify a lot about the Prophet Muhammad, for instance. Peace and blessings be upon him. We have a plethora of information that's available to us. We have like information about the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that we probably don't even have about our own grandparents. We know how he ate, how he slept, how he went to battle, the supplications he made when leaving the bathroom, the supplications he made when he left his house. We have so much information about him, historically speaking, that it gives us, a way to be able to study his life in a very objective way. But when it comes to other prophets, right, we have very, very little historical information about them. Basically, all we have is the Bible. And that's why you have to like really get into it and study it and see, is this a reliable source for knowing what these prophets did and said?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for that, man. Well, just going back to your like response. So yeah, you said that like historically we can't really verify like anything within the Bible, and so would the Quran's claim that these prophets are.
By the way, I don't mean to cut you off.
Sorry,
There
yeah,
are certain things that you can verify using the Bible,
yeah.
right?
If you
I
have
think
like
more
if
so
you
with the New Testament.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like to verify something, you need like you need like a criterion that is like correct. If you get what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
you can't verify with a corrupted text.
Um, so there are certain things that you can, like again, like like you can use the Bible as a historical book, right? So what people have to differentiate is something that's historical and something that's divine revelation. These are two different categories,
Yeah,
right? So if you're talking about a book that I'm going to use as salvation, as my guidance, as my way of living my life, as my way of worshiping the Creator, this has to be uh, much more you have to be much more strenuous when it comes to verifying it,
yeah,
right? You have to be certain without a shadow of a doubt that this is actually coming from the divine creator, right? Now
yeah,
this is different than a historical book. I can look at the Bible as a historical book and use the historical critical method to try and piece together information about what the earliest Christians were teaching, what the earliest historical version of Jesus was teaching. I can use it for that in that sense. Does that make sense?
Mm.
But you cannot take it as, no pun intended, gospel, right? You can't take it as like this is the 100% word of God without being able to verify it 100%. Does that make sense? Do you
Yeah.
understand the difference here between like a historical book and a divine book?
Yeah. Definitely. So like Jesus being Muslim, would you say that's like a theological claim rather than a historical claim?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's both. To be honest with you, it just depends on how you're defining a Muslim, right? I think that when you use the historical critical method, I think that the historical Jesus preached the kingdom of God. I think that the historical Jesus taught that he was a Messiah. I think that the historical Jesus taught that he was subordinate to the Father. I think that according to this criteria, a Muslim is justified in saying that he is a Muslim historically, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to say that it's more of a theological claim, I don't mind. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like even the things as you listed, Jesus claiming the Father to be greater than him, or claiming like he will judge the world or whatever. Like if you can't really take those things that agree with Islam and just isolate them and be like, these are the true words of Jesus, but ignore like every other thing he says. And I think like that's like
yeah, you're
hypocritical
right.
if you agree.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that maybe some other Muslims take this approach, but I think that there are certain things. Are you familiar with the historical critical method?
Vaguely.
So when you study textual criticism, right, you're going to find scholars, and I'll just name you a few. You got like Christian scholars, by the way, like E.P. Sanders, Daniel Wallace, Bruce Metzger. They use the historical critical method to try and come up with the historical Jesus, the quote unquote historical Jesus. We see a difference in the Jesus that we find in the synoptic gospels, which are Mark, Matthew, and Luke. There's a difference in that Jesus than the Jesus that we find in the Gospel of John. Okay.
Okay.
So they use a certain criteria, different criteria, like multiple attestation, the criterion of embarrassment, criterion of coherence, criterion of historical context.
Yeah.
These are different criteria that are used to just try and filter out what is Jesus, what is probably true of what the historical Jesus said, and what is probably a later development, right? And so using that criteria, we can sort of filter out the things that are not true about what Jesus said and the things that are more likely true. So, for example, we find in Mark chapter 13, verse 32, that Jesus says that the Son does not know the hour and that the angels don't know the hour. Only the Father knows the hour.
Mm.
And we find this same passage found in Matthew chapter 24. Now, this would pass the criterion of embarrassment, which is why scholars say that this is most likely something that Jesus was teaching. Okay. How does it fit the criterion of embarrassment? Later Christians who tried to, associate Jesus with divinity, or associate him with God, wouldn't be excited to associate, a lack of knowledge to Jesus, right? So if this is being taught in the first century, or this is being spread in the first century, most likely this is something that is true. Do you understand how the criterion of
Yeah.
embarrassment works?
Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just one example, right, of what scholars say. Then you find this, this common theme of Jesus teaching the kingdom of God, not only in the synoptic gospels, but also in the Gospel of John. And so historians say these are two independent attestations of Jesus teaching about the kingdom of God. So most likely this goes back to Jesus. Now, when it comes to the I am statements that are unique to the Gospel of John, historically speaking, scholars are skeptical to say that this can be attributed to Jesus. Why? Because it's only found in the Gospel of John. And these are very heavy quotes coming from Jesus.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So historians are reluctant to say that this can be traced back to Jesus if this is the only place that we find it, right? And we can see that reading Mark, Matthew, and Luke, we can see that there's just no sign of these quotations found anywhere within them. Hopefully that that makes some sense. And listen, brother, I do encourage you to read into this, because I think it's important for Christians to study this.
All right, thanks, man. That was a really insightful response. I appreciate it. I appreciate the respect as well.
Yeah, of course, man. I appreciate the respect on your end. And listen, you can come up on our lives anytime. And if you look up these things and you have, maybe some rebuttals, or you have, some questions about Islam, you're more than welcome to come up and ask us.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem, bro.
See ya.